All right, well, it's 6:31, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have a ton of stuff to cover. Thanks for being here tonight. I always enjoy seeing everybody, and I've been doing a lot of webinars through the pandemic, and I'm glad to know that we're, at least around here, we're getting close to feeling like we're on the other side of it. And I know I've traveled a little bit, and am starting to plan for 2022. So I hope you are too, and getting the feeling of therapy when you get out around other people. It's what it felt like to me. Um, so tonight, whoops, sorry. I just want to let everyone know your audio is muted, so I can't hear you talk, and your camera is off, so we won't see each other. You'll just see me if you want. You can turn me off too. I wanted you to know that, and I do go fast. We're going to cover a lot of material, but remember, it's being recorded. And I'll send you a recording about 24 hours after the event. It takes a while to process it, and then it's sent out by Zoom to the email that you registered with. So if for any reason you don't receive something by a little after about 8 tomorrow night, check your spam folder. Make sure that it's not in there. Otherwise, let me know, and I'll make sure you get it. If you would, let's use the Q&A if you have questions. We've got a lot of people online tonight, so it's not going to be an interactive thing, but I will do my best to answer questions. I'll probably stop toward the end and take a few minutes to review what we have. So if you use the Q&A, it's a little easier for me to track them. Let's see. I wanted you to know too, I'm using an iPhone 12 Pro Max. And so your phone may look different. You may have an earlier iPhone, or you may be using an Android. But the good thing is SnapSeed works pretty much the same across versions and platforms. So once we get into SnapSeed, we all should be seeing the same thing. There are a few differences between iPhone and Android in terms of how saving happens and things like that. But for the most part, the tools and things that we'll be looking at today will work the same for all of us. So let me just tell you, I know a lot of you, but I'll start by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm a dad. My son is grown, and I'm a grandfather. I just became a grandfather last month, or well, I guess April. Feels like yesterday. So we have a baby girl in the family, Maddie. I'm married to Nancy Lee. She's a metalsmith and a fine artist in her own right, and I'm inspired by her work every day. And I'm well on my way to becoming a bionic man. I had my first hip replaced in May, and I'm having the other one done in August. So it's amazing. It's not your dad's hip surgery. Let me tell you, my parents had theirs done, and it was an ordeal. And it was outpatient surgery. It's crazy. So I'm doing great and happy to have that done. I love creative writing, and I often combine my photos with images. I've been working on a book for 3 years that it just keeps getting put to the back burner. Hopefully one of these days I'll get it out with images and short stories. I started in journalism. So I started with a camera back in the 70s, shooting in black and white film. And I did journalism photography for a while. And then I went back and got my MA in education. And at that point, I jumped ship from a professional photographer career in journalism and joined corporate America. And I was with Eli Lilly and Company here in Indianapolis for about 30 years. 2010, I jumped ship from there, and I started Rad Drew Photography, LLC, and I began to teach and travel and lead groups around the world. And it's been just a ride ever since. And I know many of you have been on it with me, and we've gone to lots of places. I guess above all, I would consider myself a passionate creator. I just love the therapy of photography, if you will. It keeps me sane. I don't know what I would have done without it through the pandemic, but just being able to create, share those creations, and interact with other people, it's just been great. So I think we all have a creative, itch to scratch, and hopefully what we go over tonight will kind of fuel that a little bit. So today, what we're going to cover, this is about SnapSeed. And I know SnapSeed's been around a long time. Many of you are seasoned veterans. You probably know a lot about SnapSeed already. Some of you, I looked at you be on here, and was like, what in the world am I going to teach Carol? I have no idea. She's already knows this stuff. So hopefully I do have some new things to share. I'm going to start out, I know we have some newer people too, so I'm going to start out with a SnapSeed intro that will be a review for many of you, and I'm going to just cover a basic workflow. It's the basic workflow that I use for every image that I do in SnapSeed, just about. And throughout the presentation, I'll be talking about masking. Masking is central to the work that I do. I use it for so many different things to make selective edits. And it's just, I think, one of the most powerful parts or tools within Snapseed. We'll take a look a little bit too at stylizing images. And one of the great things about Snapseed is that it's this comprehensive tool. Not only does it edit files and things, but it also allows us to stylize. So we can make a vintage image, we can change to black and white, we can add grunge and glows and all this stuff that makes our editing so much fun. There are a few things I'm going to share with you that are just what I'd call little editing tips. There are some like one-click fixes to stuff. And I want to show you a couple of those, some related to white balance, some related to fixing keystoning, you know, when your building's leaning in, and a few other things. And we'll kind of go off on a path and do that a little bit. And then I want to get in and talk a little bit about raw files and raw processing. You know, Snapseed has a raw editor built into it, and more and more of us are starting to shoot raw. The benefits of it are great, and we're starting to see more tools that allow us to, you know, create raw files with our iPhones. And we can also now take our big camera images and those raw files, and with most cameras, process them on the phone. So we'll be looking at that. I'm going to go into some kind of administrative stuff too. I guess that's what you'd call it. There are things like looks or presets that we can create for ourselves. And there are ways to copy and paste whole groups of adjustments and move them to paste them in another image. Something that I didn't know could be done until, I don't know, not that long ago. And I've used it quite a bit. And then I want to go and take a look at a couple of the tools that I use for editing portraits. I love making portraits with the iPhone, and I know some of the Androids too now have a portrait mode or a depth mode that lets you get that narrow depth of field where you can have a face in focus and let everything drift off into that nice bokeh behind. So I'll share some of my ways I use the tools in Snapseed for that. And then finally, we'll close with creating composites. The composites, they call it a double exposure tool, but it allows you to combine multiple images to create just really cool combined images. So I'll share with you some of the ways that I do that. So let's talk just for a minute about RAW. Many of you are already shooting RAW with your iPhone in some way or another. There are lots of apps today that allow us to capture or create or record a RAW file. The iPhone native camera, if you have the 12 Pro or the 12 Pro Max. If you have the 12 Pro or Pro Max, you have the opportunity to use the new Apple proprietary Pro RAW format, which is really phenomenal. If you have the Pro or the Pro Max, you can turn that on and it does a great job. But you don't need that. If you have earlier cameras, there are other ways to capture raw images. Camera Plus 2, it's an iPhone only app, but it does a wonderful job of recording raw files for us. And then also available to both iPhone and Android users is the Lightroom Pro camera that's part of the Lightroom mobile app. If you subscribe to the Adobe Creative Cloud for Photoshop or something like that on your desktop, your subscription fee covers the full version of Lightroom for your phone. If you don't subscribe and you don't want to subscribe, you can still get the free version of Lightroom. You can photograph, record RAW, and process RAW. There are only 3 tools that the free app doesn't include. So it's a really great tool for anyone who is working with a camera prior to the 12 Pro or Pro Max. And I still use Lightroom all the time. It's just I do like the Pro RAW. So the other thing I wanted to mention, you can take raw files with your big camera and process them in Snapseed. Most cameras, Canon, Nikon, Olympus, Panasonic, and Sony, the major leading cameras, all have multiple cameras that you can use to do this. Now, if you're a Fuji shooter like me, you're kind of out of luck. There is one Fuji camera, the X100, whose files can be read in Snapseed. If I take one of my my Fuji X-T1 or X-T2 files and try and open it in Snapseed, it only sees a JPEG. So just keep that in mind. I will include a complete list of those camera compatibilities in the handout that I'll send after the program. So keep that in mind. Let's take a look at a few image examples, and then we'll get right into processing. So this is an image that I took here in Indiana last winter. It was a cold, rainy, dreary day, and kind of typical of our Januaries and Decembers. And, you know, I liked the image. I thought it was cool, nice color, and, you know, leading line with the road going down to the great tree in the barn and all that. But I was thinking, this is not how I felt on that day. This was a bitter day, a dreary day. And I transformed it using Snapseed. I used the black and white app, and I transformed it to this. That's how I felt that day. It was dreary. And this really kind of said dreary to me. So I love being able to do that with one app. This is an image that I took just, I think it was in April. We had a weird snow, a late snow. And I went over to Crown Hill Cemetery where I photographed, and I used the iPhone. This is a 12 Pro Max image with Pro RAW processed on Snapseed. And I look at this image still, and it blows me away that we have, that we can make an image like this with our iPhone. I mean, the color quality and the clarity of it and all of that, it's just remarkable to me. And we'll look at this image and how I processed it later on today. I love shooting infrared. I've been shooting infrared with my Fuji cameras for years. Last year, I learned how to figured it out or discovered how to create infrared images with my iPhone. So I've been doing that for the past year. And this is an infrared image that I made last weekend at Gibbs Garden in Atlanta with the iPhone, and I processed it today in Snapseed. And you know, it blows me away that we're able to do this with a device that fits in our pocket. And we'll look at how I'll show you some of the stuff on processing. If you're interested in infrared, there's a Facebook group that I created that you can join and see more about what we're doing and see the work of lots of other people. This is another image with the 12 Pro Max, this with Pro RAW. And again, this is another example of an image I look at, and I just am dumbfounded that it came from an iPhone. The detail, the color, all of that, it's really remarkable what we're able to do. This is an infrared image that I shot this weekend at Atlanta Botanical Gardens. This is Chihuly glass, or I guess those are, what do they call those? Not orchids, but you know what I'm talking about. I can't think of it. Anyway, they're glass, and they're floating on this pond, and we had clear, no ripples in the smooth glass water, and I made that shot and processed it with Snapseed. This is an image taken years ago, probably with the iPhone 10. So if you don't have the latest and greatest phones, so what? That you can still do so much with the earlier phones. This was processed in Snapseed. And just, it's one of my favorite images from my trips to Cuba. It just says so much about what I experience when I go there, and the color and the ocean and the kid on his bike, all of that kind of come together for me. And again, older phone. Another infrared shot taken this weekend at Gibbs Garden, shot with the iPhone, processed in Snapseed. One of the other things I really like to do with Snapseed is combine images. There's a tool, they call it the double exposure tool, which really, it's a composite tool, not double exposure, but let's not get into that. This is an image of a dancer in Cuba in little ruins outside of the city. And then I took a tree that I shot here in Indiana, and I combined the two and created this kind of dramatic image with the tree overlaying her. And you have to use masking and some things like that to make it work. And I'll show you. This is another composite made from this weekend. This is one of the models that we had. And then again, that tree from Gibbs Garden, all done in Snapseed. I used some vintage things and Glamour Glow and some other stuff to kind of massage this image to create what's here. And these are, this kind of stuff, all I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I do it or how I figured out how to do it. And then you guys are going to have whatever creative, burst you have, and you come up with your own stuff. I always love seeing what everyone does. I love taking portraits with this tool. This is our dog Duke. He's 15, so he and I have a lot in common. We take a lot of naps together in the afternoon, and he's a great dog. But this was taken with iPhone processed in Snapseed, and I love the image, and it's a great tool for working on portraits, whether they're pets, or people. This is a dancer we photographed in Atlanta this weekend, and her dog Dawn. Dawn stole the show. And this image I wanted to share with you because I used the portrait mode on the iPhone camera, which allows me to blur that background. But I wanted to show this one because we've got two different kinds of faces in this portrait. We want the dancer's face to be, smooth and all of that, whereas we want the dog's face, the puppy's face, we want to see the texture in his hair and his face. So the same editing doesn't work for both of those faces. So I'll show you how I created, worked on it to get both of them looking good. So that's it. Those are the images that I wanted to share with you. And now I'm ready to jump in. So I am going to navigate out here to a folder, or an album rather, where I have a bunch of images. And I'm going to start with an image that many of you may have seen before, but I choose it because it's such a great way to illustrate so many things that are Snapseed. So I'm going to go out here to the Snapseed icon, and I'm going to open it. And let me see, it's showing me that I was working on an image earlier. So I'm going to close that up, and I'm going to tap on Snapseed again and just open it so you see what it looks like when you open it. Now, most of you have probably seen this already. You can come in this way and open images from here. I'm going to tap on the screen, and it allows me to choose an image from the device. Now, I'm going to show you later a shortcut for opening images in Snapseed. Now I'm navigating out here to where I have our files. This is the one I want up here with the tree on the beach, and I'm going to tap on that. And there is the image, and I'm going to choose the use icon to bring it into Snapseed. And here's the interface. And again, I'm going to go quickly through this. If you're new to this, you can go back and look at it again. We have an open button up here. If you want to open a new image, you simply tap the open button, and you go find your image in the camera roll and click it and open it. If you have not saved this image, it will tell you, hey, you want to save this image first. Kind of gives you a warning. Otherwise, it will just open the new image. This icon right here is known as the stacks icon or the history icon. This is where, as we do adjustments, all of these layers appear in that place. It's a really useful place for seeing what you've done, but also you can open each of those layers and go in and tweak them and edit them. It's also where the masking feature resides. So it's a real important tool, and we'll be going into that in depth. This is just an icon that gives you some metadata about the file. It's just maybe date and size and stuff like that. I'm not even going to open it. This, though, if you're following along, you may want to set your settings. I'm going to tap on this ellipsis here, these three dots, open that up, and I'm going to open up my settings. And you'll see that these are optional up here, but I like to have my images saved to a Snapseed album. Just makes it easier to organize my files. And then I like to see a large preview when I open an image and it previews it in Snapseed. So those two I recommend checking, but that's just me. These down here are really important. I'm going to go to image size, and you'll notice I have do not resize selected. I want to make sure that anything I do in Snapseed isn't going to down res or make my image smaller. We're already working with a smaller file because our phone has a small sensor and all of that compared to our big camera. So if you value printing large and having really good quality at a larger size, you want to make sure you don't do anything to degrade the quality. So you want that set. And then you want to go to format and quality. And I recommend either JPEG at 100% or PNG. I use JPEG all the time. If you're asked to do something for a magazine or a website, sometimes the company will ask you for a PNG file. It's a lossless format, and it's just different. I don't see the point in doing them all the time. I just do the JPEG at 100. So I'm going to back out of those and go back to the home page. So down at the bottom are three different tabs. We have looks, tools, and export. The looks, if I tap on that, these are presets. These thumbnails represent collections of adjustments that when you click on the preset or the look, it's going to apply those adjustments to your image very quickly. It's a quick way of finding a solution, and maybe it's the right solution and complete, or maybe you go into the stacks after you've selected it and you adjust things. So I don't use them a lot, but what I do use, you can also create your own presets. So what I do a lot of times, let's say I have a dozen images taken on this beach on this day with this kind of light, I might process the very first one, save that as a preset, and then bring in the other images and apply that preset to those images. And so it gets me there very quickly. It's just a shortcut for processing. And I'll take a look at that with you later. There's some really unique things about the way it works with the develop mode in SnapSeed, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. So I'm going to close those up, and I'm not going to apply a preset right now. And I'm going to skip over tools and go to export. And this is one of the places where I think we do have some difference between iPhone and Android. And I apologize that I don't know this for certain, but my understanding is with the Android that I looked at, there is a save and an export, but no save a copy. And save a copy is what I normally save as here, but not to worry. When you save, even though it's saving changes, you can still undo those changes. So it's still a non-destructive method of editing your files. Save a copy allows you, it actually saves a copy, and it saves all of the layers of development layers that you've done, adjustment layers. And when you reopen that file, they're all there, and you can open them up and continue editing them or delete them or whatever you want. If you export the file, your image will look the same as if you had saved a copy, but when you open the exported file, all those layers have been flattened. You can no longer open your adjustment layers and do any more editing to them. You can add new edits, you just can't redo the old ones. So for most things, I'll do save a copy. It gives me the freedom to go back and edit things. That's it on the export. Let's go into the tools now. And again, I know this is a review for many, but there's 28 tools in here. And we're going to touch on a bunch of them tonight, but I encourage you to explore them all. There's some really cool things in here that let you do just wild things. And we're going to look at some of them tonight. So the things mostly we'll look at tonight are tune image, details, perspective, glamour glow, and some of these stylizing things, vintage. We'll look at portrait, head pose, double exposure, and vignette, maybe a few others. So what I'm going to show you right now, well, first of all, I'm going to turn my phone sideways so that you can see the image larger. And I just want to mention, when I do this, we now have no words anymore. We now have images. Instead of looks, we have an arc. Instead of tools, we have a pencil. Instead of export, we have a share icon. So the same functionality, just a different way to find it. It kind of threw me for a loop the first time I saw that, and I wanted to share that with you. So this is my process that I use for everything in the beginning. And then I might take the image beyond that and do other stylizing with it. I like to get the image looking as good as I can before I start adding effects. So the first thing I do with any image is look at it like this one and say, well, what's wrong? What do I need to fix? Well, obviously, the first thing I see here is my horizon is leaning way to the right. Got to fix that. I also have this tree over here that is on the edge, on the border of the image, and it's pulling my eye out, as it will the viewer, and I just don't want it there. It's distracting. So I'm going to remove that. So let's start by leveling the horizon. I'm going to go into the tool icon, and I'm going to choose to use the perspective tool. There is a rotate tool that does a nice job, but it crops out part of our already small image. So I don't like to use that one very often. I use the perspective tool because you'll see in a minute, it doesn't take anything away from the photo. So the perspective tool has 4 different options within it. We're going to use the rotate option for this, what's it called? Activity. And I'm going to put my finger on the screen. And as I scroll I can go back and forth with it. And this is all visual. I'm just visually aligning the horizon with that grid. And you see the black triangles at the corner of each corner. When I release my finger, it used content-aware software to fill in those areas. And it does a very nice job. So it hasn't cropped any of our image out, which is important if you're trying to retain that size. Now, if you have a complicated edge on your image, you may need to go check and make sure that it didn't leave some artifact that you don't want there. But generally, it does a pretty good job. Once you're happy with what you have, and this is true of any of the adjustments in SnapSeed, you either have an X to quit out of it and not keep the change, or you have a check mark to commit to that change. So I'm going to tap the check mark, and I've just committed to the change, and now I'm back here in the home area of SnapSeed. I'm going to go to the tool again. This time, I'm going to get the healing brush and take out that palm tree. Now, before I do this, I just want to let you know, if you have a complicated healing job to do, use the app Touch Retouch. It works on iPhone and Android. It costs about $2. It's phenomenal. It's the best of its kind I've ever seen. For SnapSeed, this is adequate, and this will do the job. But if you have something that's really important, you might want to use that other tool. So you notice I don't even see a brush in this tool until I touch the screen, and you see the circle on there. The brush cannot be sized. You can only increase the size of the image, and the brush appears smaller when you do. So it's relative to the size of the picture. I'm going to come over here where this palm tree is, and I'm just going to paint it in. That didn't do bad. So now sometimes you notice it got this extra person down here. So I can zoom in, and I can come over here and eliminate. Oops, I double tapped on the screen by accident. And there. So that's not bad. I might play with it a little more, but I'm going to be quick. So now that looks great. If I want to jump back to the full screen, I'm going to double tap on the screen, and it jumps me right back to that full screen. I'm going to click the check mark to commit to that change. The next thing I'm going to do here is go into my brush. I'm ready to start working with the exposure and sharpening and those kinds of things. So I'm going to go to the brush and the pencil, and I'm going to choose Tune Image. Tune Image allows you to adjust all of these different variables. And I generally start with ambiance. It's kind of a combination of the first three elements. So I'm going to start with that. And to make an adjustment, you select it by going over with blue, and then I'm going to drag my finger to the right. You see the numbers increasing in the blue progress bar at the top. And I'm going to make it go all the way to 100. Now, clearly that's oversaturated and everything, but look at the difference. There's before and there's after. And I'm just touching on the screen to show that. So I'm going to back my value down maybe to 50%. And I like the dynamic color that it's added, and just overall changes that it's made. I want to point out over here on the left, you'll notice there is a histogram. If you don't see the histogram, you might see this instead. It's a button. Tap on it, and the histogram comes up. If you use the histogram in other editing tools, you know how valuable it can be when you're editing for exposure and so on. If you don't use a histogram yet, put it on your list of things to learn, because it will make your editing easier, and you'll just be better at it when you have this aid to help you. I'm not going to go into it very much. I just wanted everybody to know it was there. So after ambiance, I'm going to go down to highlights. Highlights is a brightness slider for the highlights in the image. If I go to the right, I can blow those clouds completely out. What I like to do is go down about 20%. Now, if I look at the before and after, I've added a little bit of drama to the cloud. Now, that may be more than you want. It may look too noisy to you. We're going to address that in a minute. I do like the way it gets the edges of these billowing clouds and kind of adds some drama. The next thing is the shadows slider. Again, it affects only the shadows. You can make the shadows very bright when you go to the right. Notice how bright the tree got. Or you can make them very dark if you go to the left. What I want to do is go somewhere just below, maybe 20% below midway, because it's darkening these shadows here. It's giving me some depth in the tree here, some dimensional depth, and then I've got these shadows in the foreground that are a little darker. And I'm gonna go with that. The last thing that I have here is warmth. And warmth is on the left, you can cool things. On the right, you can warm them. With this image, we have these yellows here in the tower and in the foreground and in the tree. And by bringing the warmth up to maybe 10 or 12, it's just enough to pop those yellows. And I think it really adds, to my eye, it adds something to the image. That's everything I want to do in here. I'm going to tap on the check mark. And now I'm ready to do some sharpening and structure. So I'm going to go into the tool again. I'm going to get details. And I've got two things I can adjust, structure and sharpening. And both of them essentially have a sharpening effect. They treat the pixels differently. But what I'm going to do is bring my structure up maybe to, I don't know, 35, and my sharpening up to the mid-20s. These aren't magic numbers, but if you zoom in, you can kind of see what's going on in your image. I like what the sharpening and structure did down here in the image into the tree, but look how noisy our sky got from that adjustment. It's a lot of sand in it, a lot of, gritty noise. So what I want to do, I'm going to commit to this global change. But how do I tell Snapseed, hey, don't put that adjustment up here in the sky? Well, what I'm going to do is go to the history button here, tap on that, go down to view edits, and here are all the layers that we've done so far. We started out, if I tap down here on original, there you see the original image. Then we changed, fixed the horizon with perspective. We removed the palm tree with healing. We tuned the image up with a little exposure values and things. And then ultimately we did that detail sharpening. So each layer you can go in and work on. So I'm going to tap on details. There are 3 tools in here. There's a trash can, so I can pitch the whole layer, or there's sliders, so I can go in and continue to adjust the layer, or I can choose the brush. This is the masking tool. I'll tap on it, and it's showing me the image in the masking area here, but the image that we're looking at, it does not reflect that sharpening and structure that we just did. It's showing me the image without that. It's waiting basically for me to tell it where to put that sharpening and structure. So if I go in here, if I turn on this little blue eyeball, I can see marks on the screen. I'm going to take my finger and I'm painting in on the screen in this area. And I'm basically saying to Snapseed, hey, put the structure and the sharpening adjustment that I just did on these items and not in the sky. And I'm being very fat fingered here. And you're going to go into this with a stylus and you're going to be very precise. And you can be very, very precise with this tool. But so what we're seeing right now is we're going to be applying 100% of the detail, adjustment, structure, and sharpening to these areas that are red. So I'll go ahead and tap on that to commit. And now if I go back one and I can turn off details by tapping on the below it. Look at the difference when I go to details here. Well, you can't really see it because it's showing here, but not up here. So let me show you what I want to do here. I'm still unhappy with these clouds. They still appear too noisy to me. So I'm going to do one more detail layer. I'm going to tap on the tool here, go to the details, and this time I'm going to zoom in on the sky so I can really see it. You notice we're in the structure tool, and I'm going to take my finger and slide to the left and watch as I go down. Look how creamy and wonderful the sky just got. There's before and there's after. That's the look I want in my sky. So I'm going to commit to that. Problem is I just committed to smoothing the whole image and I lost the texture and detail that I had down here. So what I'm going to do again is go up to my stacks, my history, choose that detail layer I just did, choose the brush. And this time I'm going to say, put that smoothing effect only up here in the clouds. And there we have it. And now I'm going to commit to that. And now when we go out and look at the final image, there it is. We have this really nice kind of tooth in the foreground and detail in the sand, and then these beautiful creamy sky. And at this point, we could be done, or we could continue on and do other edits. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out of here and grab another image. And this time, I'm going to show you the shortcut way of entering into SnapSeed, taking an image in. So before we opened SnapSeed, we tapped on SnapSeed and we went to the camera roll and we found the image we want, and then we brought it back into SnapSeed. Well, this way, it's the opposite. I'm in my camera roll. I've identified this photo that I want to work on. So what I'm going to do is copy that photo to a clipboard. Now, different phones have different ways of copying. With the phone and the operating system I'm using, I can press down on the image and copy that to a clipboard. You may have another method of that that you're familiar with. That's the method that I'm using. You can also open the image and copy it in a different way, but that's the shortcut way. Now I'm going to go to SnapSeed here. Whoops, I did it wrong. So I'm going to go to SnapSeed. Instead of tapping on SnapSeed to open the app, I'm going to do a hard press on the app, and it brings up another menu, and I'm going to choose paste that image that I just copied. Now here, it's about to paste the image, but it's saying, hey, you didn't save this. Do you care? In this case, I don't care. I'm going to say, go ahead and open and overwrite that image. But it's a nice safeguard, so you can't, you don't easily overwrite something. So here is an image that I took in Tuscany a couple of years ago, beautiful foggy morning. And I'm going to walk through this process again a little bit and show how I address this image. So the first thing I notice about this is a standard 4:3 aspect ratio. It's what the phone produces when you take a native camera image. I think I've got way too much sky up here. I love that negative space, but it's too much. It's almost half as much. It's the same amount as I have down here. So I want to do something with that. I want to crop it differently. So I'm going to go into my, where am I here? Where are my tools? My tools are gone. All right, hold on. Let me back out. Something's going on with, had a little hiccup there. See if I can do that again. Okay, something happened to my tools. Don't know what. Okay, so I'm going to open my tools. I'm going to go to the crop icon, and we have several different kinds of cropping aspect ratios and tools that we can use. The default that our cameras produce is a 4:3 aspect ratio. I want something that's narrower than that, so I'm going to go to this 3:2. I could use the free crop and just drag this down, but I'm going to go to 3:2 and keep a standard crop size, and then I'm going to drop this down, and now I feel a little bit better about that space. Now, the other thing that I might do here, and this is a judgment call, but I wish I had framed this a little bit to the right so that this tree was included but wasn't so close to the edge, but it is. So what I want to do is eliminate that tree. To do that, I'm going to go to the free crop tool over here on the end, tap on that, and then I'm going to drag the cropping tool in, or the edge of the frame in, until I've got that tree out of the frame. Now, all of this image right here, part of the image is being cropped away. Typically, I don't like to crop my iPhone images because they're already small. But on some cases, I'll go ahead and do that. And I'm going to do it here. So there we have our image. Now I'm going to go and do our process with, I'm going to start with tune image. And I'm going to go down to ambiance, and I'm going to play with ambience. Now, this image is a little differently, poses different challenges because I don't want to lose that fog. I want to keep that fog soft and effective in the image. So I may not do as much ambiance. I want to look at this edge here. And as I bring the ambiance up, it's lightening this leading line a little bit. And that's what I want. So I'm going to stop right there. And then I'm going to go to highlights. And I'm going to drop my highlights down, and notice how I can kind of darken the sky a little bit with that. And then the shadows, and the shadows is going to be really important in this image, because watch what happens as I drop the shadows to the negative. Look at how I've darkened the road here. I've darkened the shadow cast by the dog as well as the shadows here. And so now we've added that drama to the image. And I think there's before and there's after. It's just a little bit more engaging, and it emphasizes he's standing kind of in a spotlight of light. And so it emphasizes that spotlight. The next thing I'll do is go down to the warmth. And again, we've got some yellow here, and we've got yellow in this field over here. And I want to go ahead and just pop the yellow just a tiny bit. Doesn't have to be much. I might even go up to saturation and give it just a little bit of saturation to help pop these flowers a little. And then I'll commit to that. And there we are at that point. That may be all I do to this image. But one thing that I really like is to use the vintage tool right here. And the vintage tool, I'll go ahead and open it up. It gives you 12 different presets that you can select from. And I just think they're gorgeous. I mean, you can go through and look at that one. You've got that really nice hint of sepia tone. You've got these down here. You've got real blue, and so on. I'm going to go back to this one up here. I think that's the one I like the most. Once you choose one of those, you can then look at these variables and adjust those. So you could brighten or darken the image, saturate. There's a style strength slider, so you can increase that particular style or decrease it. I don't know, kind of maybe like it a little bit. Then the vignette is often very strong. It defaults to 30. I often want to back that up, but in this case, not a lot. I like that dark vignette. And so now there is our image. There's where we started, and there's where we are now. I think it's just a much more engaging image, and the crop is better, and just a really fun way to process these. Let's go to another image. Let's see here. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about some of those kind of one press things or that I mentioned earlier. One of those is a correction for keystoning. I'm going to get this image right here and paste it into SnapSeed and turn it sideways so you can see it well. So you can see how this image is keystoning in at the top. And this is a function of the lens and the angle of shooting. You can't really avoid this happening, but you can correct it. So the tool that I like to use for that is that perspective tool that we used earlier to level the horizon. So I'll go in here and tap on that. Now, you've got several different tools that you could use and manually drag some edges around and so on and try and get that straight. But I want to show you what happens. This is the magic wand tool. Sometimes it's really magic. Sometimes it doesn't work well. It depends on the image. But watch what happens to this image when I click this button. I find that amazing. We just completely straightened that up. Now, there's a little bit of a content-aware fill goober down here, but we got to crop this anyway because of the way the edge is. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to click the check to commit to that. And then I'm going to go up here to my crop tool. And again, I think I'm going to choose a 5:4 orientation aspect ratio and pull that in. And there is my crop. And look, it looks pretty good. Now, when I look at it, I'm noticing that it's still twisted a little bit. Something's not quite right. So I'm going to go back to the perspective tool. And this time, I'm going to use this thing called free. And I'm going to tap on it, and it gives me some handles. I can actually start pulling parts of this image around. So I'm going to start over here, and I'm going to grab and pull down, and watch how I can level out. Just pull down like that. And I've just kind of squared things up. There's a place over here where this looks high to me. I'm going to go over here in this corner, and I'm just going to pull it down. So now there is our image. There's where we started. And there it is now, really nicely cleaned up. I might go in here. I've got a little piece of this wastebasket here that I would probably clone out or something, but easily done. But I just love this tool. I use it all the time for cityscapes and things like that, where you really want to true up some buildings. And you know, you can true one on the left and the one on the right still crooked, and that's where that free form tool comes into play. Really, really useful. Let me go back to grab another image here. So this one, this is a fun one too. I'm going to copy this. This is not, I'm going to warn you, this is not an award-winning image, but it helps me demonstrate what I want to show you here. This was taken several years ago with an early iPhone at night, so the quality is poor, and the image is just really, yeah, it's no good in terms of its quality, and it's all askew and everything. But this is the magic of this app. I'm going to go into the perspective tool, and I'm going to figure out what I need to do here. I need to bring the right side of the image toward the front of the frame, and I need to straighten the towers, and I need to level it and all that stuff. I'm going to start by using this tool called Tilt. And the tilt, you can tilt up and down and sideways. I'm going to start by tilting forward a little bit. And you notice content aware kicked in and filled in those areas. The next thing I'm going to do is tilt the image to the left. So watch this. See how look how I'm cute, straightening it up. Now I'm going to go to the level tool, which we used before for the horizon. And I'm going to level the image. And maybe it's going to need a little more. And now the last thing I'm going to do with this is go to that free tool, and I'm looking at these towers, and I'm going to pull this one to the right. I'm going to go a little bit farther than level, and then I'm going to grab the one on the left and pull it back. And as I do, this one levels up and that one levels up. So now they're both pretty level, and I can go into the tilt tool if I need to again and make a little tweak here. I'm going to roll that a little bit more, and then I'm going to go, and it needs, each time you do an adjustment like this, it requires a leveling adjustment again. So something like that. And now I've also got it. Go back. So here I just accidentally closed that tool, but I want to go back. I could open another perspective layer, but I'm just going to go back to the history button, open perspective. I'm going to tap here, and I'm going to continue editing in that same layer. So I'm going to go, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to try and get this squared up again. So I'm really close. I'm going to stop there. So there's our image. And here's where we started with it. And by using this tool, we've been able to really turn it into, you know, if the quality of the image was right, it'd be a salvageable image. But I use this all the time. It's just a great tool for fixing these kinds of things. And it's got a lot of ways that it can work. Let's see. All right. So I want to show you another one of these kind of one push wonder things. Again, I'm going to copy this image and paste it into SnapSeed. And there we go. Turn it sideways. So these are my friends, Vivian and Miguel from Havana. Vivian's been my guide in Cuba for 7 years. I was at their home a year ago, January, made this image. As soon as I saw the photograph, I was like, oh, the color's way off. Their skin is orange. The wall in the background is not correct. And I knew it because I was there and remembered. So what do you do to fix that? Well, what I'm going to do is go to the white balance tool right here. And, you know, white balance lets you, if you look at what you can adjust in the tool by sliding up and down, you can adjust the temperature, which means you can either warm it up or cool it off, so yellow or blue, and you can change the tint from a magenta on one end to green on the other. Now you could sit here and manipulate those sliders and see if you can come up with the right thing. That's really hard. One option is to use the eyedropper here. If I tap on the eyedropper, I get a loop on the screen, And what I want to do, notice as I move it over different colors of the screen, I get these different white balances. What you want to find is the darkest, either a neutral area, either completely black or completely white. Gray can sometimes work. And like if I come over here, right here behind Miguel's neck on the wall, that's getting us pretty close. But even that takes a minute, and you got to play with it to find the right thing. I'm going to leave it all out of whack and show you. If you use this button, this is auto white balance. Now, just like the perspective tool, that's that magic wand tool, it doesn't work on every image, but when it works, it's fantastic. So I often start with this to see if it gets me where I need to go. Watch what happens when I tap on the auto white balance button here. Look at that. It's perfect. I mean, it's exactly, there's before and there's after. It's a perfect tonality, perfect skin tone with one tap. There's not anything else that I need to do as far as color on this image. So, and if you look, if you slide up and down, you can see it changed the temperature by reducing it to minus 35 and the tint -3 toward the magenta side. But anyway, cool thing. It's great for food. If you do food photography, nothing worse than a delicious looking meal that's slightly off color, kind of loses its appeal. This can help you get your color right on a food dish. So go ahead and commit to that. So while we're here, I'm going to, we're working with this portrait, excuse me. I'm going to show you a tool that I use quite frequently for portraits. I'm going to open up the portrait tool right here. I'll tap on it, and this has a facial recognition component to it. So if you have a photograph of a dog or a photograph of a person with a beard that's turned sideways or something, this app may not open because it'll tell you, I don't see a face here. So it has to see a face. The other thing is when you have two faces, sometimes it's only really recognizing one. So when you make adjustments to the face, you may only be adjusting one. That's what's going to happen here. So you have all these presets. You can choose just by tapping on these presets, and you may find something close to what you're looking for. And I encourage you to do that. But know that if you just leave it at none and go in here, all of those presets are created with just these three sliders. There's face spotlighting to brighten the face. There's skin smoothing things out, obviously. And eye clarity, what I was saying is that I went down to the portrait mode, and all of those presets that are created are done with these three things. So what I'm going to do here with this image is I'm going to use face spotlight, and I'm going to bring it up. If I bring it up all the way, you can see how bright her face has gotten, and his a little bit, but mostly it's focusing on her face. So I'll bring it, I don't want it that bright, I'll bring it down. And then I'm going to go to skin smoothing. Now, you know, Vivian doesn't need skin smoothing, but what I like about skin smoothing, when you do it, it can give your image a really ethereal glow that I like. You can overdo it. It's like glamour glow, but I like a little bit. I wouldn't want to do that too much on Miguel's face, so it doesn't bother me so much that the app is only focusing on Vivian right now. But then the one that I really like is eye clarity. And you notice they're already nice catch lights in their eyes. I had the light coming over my shoulder into their faces, so it was reflecting back, and I got these nice little catch lights. What eye clarity does is let me emphasize emphasize those highlights a little bit. If you can overdo it quickly, there's just 15. If I go way up to 100, look, I've given her kind of evil eyes here. So you can overdo it. I find that if I stay under about 30 or so, that's usually plenty. And so once I have that, and then that's it, I'm going to go ahead and commit to that. And there is our image. There's where we started with it, and there's where we are now. And then a few other things I could use masking to do. I'm just going to talk about them rather than do them because I've got other things that I want to show you. But what I might do is go in and mask Miguel's face, lighten his eyes a little bit, add a little sharpening, sharpen his lips and her lips. A lot of times that's a nice way to sharpen eyes and lips to bring out the face. It can really just be a nice touch in addition to processing a portrait. Finally, I might go out to and add a vignette to this. And the vignette tool, it looks like you get this little dot, and you can take 2 fingers and decide on how big it should be. You can position it where you want it. And then you have 2 things to adjust. You have outer brightness, which lets you can darken that way down. And then you have inner brightness, lets you open up the inside. To me, the best vignette is one that you barely know is there. It's almost subliminal to the viewer. And so something as subtle, bring that down a little bit, something like that. So there's before and there's after. And so now there's our portrait. There's where we started with it, and there's where we ended up. So let's go back here. And let's take a look at this image of our dancer. Again, this was from last weekend. Okay, so there's the image. And this is the one I was mentioning, kind of presents some challenges because of the 2 different faces that we have here. The first thing I want to do with this image is I do want to crop it because I've got that bright edge on the side. So again, I'm going to choose that 5:4 aspect ratio, and I can crop out that side a little bit. The next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the portrait tool again. And I know it's going to affect her face and not the dog's because it doesn't recognize a dog face. So I'm going to spotlight her face a little bit. And I'm going to use skin smoothing, again, not because she needs it in any way, but because it does add a nice effect to the image. And then I'm going to do a little bit of eye clarity. It's already got really nice, powerful catch lights, but I'm going to just give them just a little bit of pop. And that's it. Now, I want to show you one other tool, and I always tell people that I think it should be used very judiciously. It's called the head pose tool. And in head pose, you have a tool here that lets you actually tilt the head in the direction you want. And then you also have sliders here that let you adjust the pupil size of the eye, the subject's smile, and the focal length of the lens. So watch what happens if I were to adjust the pupil size. I can't make it smaller, but I can make it bigger. So look at this. Do you see her eyes getting bigger as I go? Pretty crazy. Sometimes it's useful if you have someone whose beautiful eyes just aren't open, and you can kind of expand them a little bit, but you really have to be careful with this. The next thing down here is her smile, which is perfect the way it is. But if I wanted to, I could give her a grin. Or I could make her kind of pucker. Again, I think these things are to be used very, very judiciously. It can help with little things, but, and then finally the focal length of the lens, and you will actually watch your face distort as we do this. Sometimes bringing it back in, depending on what lens you used, you can actually restore the natural face rather than distort it. But anyway, I wanted to show you those. One of the things that you can also do is you can ask a subject a question and get an answer. So I asked Emma, did you enjoy the photo shoot? And she said, yes, she did. So this is the head pose tool. You can move her chin up or down. You can move her head to the left or right, just slightly. And sometimes that can be a nice adjustment. But again, you have to be careful that you don't misadjust the subject's face and transform them into somebody they're not. So I'll go ahead and accept that. And then what I want to do here with the dog, with the puppy, his face is too dark. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit, and I want to bring out some of the detail in his face. So what I'm going to do is go to I'm going to go to Tune Image, and I'm going to go down to Shadows, and I'm going to zoom in on him so I can see him. And I don't care what happens to the rest of the image because I'm going to mask this. I'm going to bring the shadows up to a point that I like. So there's before and there's after. And then I'm going to, I might even go and do a little touch of contrast there. There, I think that's good. And I'll commit to that. And now I'm going to go up to the stacks again and go to the masking tool. And I'm going to zoom in here and use my finger, and I'm going to paint that, those brightening changes onto the dog's face. And I'm going really quick and not being real accurate. So you will be more accurate. So there it is before the change and lightening of the face, and there it is after. The next thing I might do here is go to details, and I'm going to go down to structure. And again, what I want to do is bring out the structure in his face, the detail. So I'm going to increase the structure, and I'm going to sharpen a little bit. So this is not a look you want to do to a human face, because what you see is every pore and every blemish. It's not a good look. But for the dog, it's going to be great. So I'm going to commit to that, go up to my history, go to my masking tool. And once again, I'm going to paint in the smoothing, or I mean the texture and structure effect on the dog. So now there is our image. And again, I might close it with a vignette. And actually that looks very good to me right there. Something like that. So there's our image. There's before where we started, and there's where we ended up. So just a couple things that can be done with those. All right, so I'm looking at our time. We've got about 20 minutes, which is great because I want to share with you. I want to get into well, a couple things. So we've got time to do both composites and also the raw editing, which I want to get to. So I'm going to open up this barn. I want to show you how to use the tool in SnapSeed. Oops. How to use the tool in SnapSeed to add a sky. So here's our barn, great looking barn and a bald sky. So what I'm going to do is go out here, and at the very bottom here, we have a double exposure tool. And I'm going to tap on that, and I get this menu of tools, and I have this one here that's add a photo. So I'll tap on that, and I'm going to navigate out in my camera roll to where I have the photo I want. And I'm going to choose this sky right here. So now there's our sky. It looks really crummy. And we have two other tools down here. These are blend modes. So if you've worked in other software editing tools, you know about blend modes. SnapSeed only has 6. There are many more that could be available. I'm going to choose the overlay blend mode. Then I'm going to go to the opacity slider right here, tap on that, and I'm going to bring the opacity of that top layer of the sky all the way up. And I'm going to commit to that. So now there's our image, and where's the barn? Well, the barn is behind the cloud image. So now I'm going to go up here to our layers and go into this, and I'm going to mask, and there is our barn. It's set to apply 100% of the edit, which is the adding of the image. So where is that sky? Well, watch, I'm going to take my finger and I'm painting the sky right in. Now I'm going really, really fast. When you do this, you're going to zoom in, you're going to use a stylus, and you're going to be very, very precise. But for this demo, I'm just going really quickly. And you can see I've kind of missed some of that. So let me see if I can get that in there. So you can see I'm getting on top of the barn. So what do you do when you make a mistake like that? How do you erase? Well, what you need to do is drop the value down to 0, and then you can wipe away that area. It's kind of like the erase button. And again, I'm going to stop there as far as being precise, but look at that. We just went from, a really boring sky to a sky that works really well with this image. Now, clearly, I didn't get real good on masking here because I went so quick, but really fun, easy way to add interest to your images. And I love doing it. So let's go. I'm going to do one more of these, and then we'll go to raw processing. So I'm going to copy this image and paste it into SnapSeed and open it. And there's the image. This is a dancer I photographed, an Afro-Cuban dancer in Havana a couple of years ago. And I just loved the profile of her face, the strength of it. And it just really struck me as powerful. And so I'm going to create a composite here. And the image that I'm going to go get, I'm going to go out to the Get an Image tool here. The image that I'm going to get is one that I photographed here at a botanical garden in Indiana. And I'm going to make a headdress for her from this other plant. And, I took the liberty to do this, but this is not far off of what many of the Cuban, Afro-Cuban costumes would look like. So I don't think I'm too far off, and I think they would approve of what I'm doing. So what I'm doing now, I'm sizing. I can play with this slider here so I can see what I'm doing. I want to see the face behind, and I want to be able to position the top image, and I can twist it with 2 fingers and expand it. And I'm trying to get it in a position on her head that I think will look good when I make it a headdress. So there we go. I'm going to go back to my opacity, and I'm going to increase the opacity of that plant. Now I'm going to go and do my masking again. And let's go there and there. And now when I take my finger, I'm going to paint in this plant as it becomes a kind of headdress. And again, I'm going very quickly, so I apologize for not being accurate, but know that you can be with a little patience and a stylus maybe. And if you have a skinny finger, which I don't have. And so now what I want to do, I just took the value down to 0 so I could go in here and erase that part of the plant that's coming over her face. And then I'll go back to 100 and I'll try and get that red edge. Like that, and fill it in. And a double tap brings me back down. So I know it's not 100% accurate, but there's our image. It's just a really fun way of combining 2 images to create something very different. And you can see how relatively easy it is. And I went very quick. I didn't mask all of this precisely or anything, but it's very doable. All right, let's take a look at processing infrared images, or processing raw images. I mean, one of them will be an infrared. So let's grab this image right here. This is the one of the Gothic chapel. This is the raw file. Now, I just opened it in SnapSeed, and I don't know if you can tell where we are. We are in a development mode, which we've never seen before. It only appears when you open a raw file into SnapSeed. If I were to commit to this, which I'll do right now, and then go up here to our layers, what we would see is the develop layer. So it's when you have a JPEG, this would be the original layer, but when you have a raw file, you're in the develop layer. and nothing's been done here yet. So I'm going to tap on that to get back out to my my workspace here. You've got a couple things down here. You have a white balance tool, and I often start with white balance, and I'll come over and tap auto white balance. And I don't know if you could see the slight shift there, but I may come back to that in a minute. What I need to do now, if I slide up and down, I have all these variables. And if you've processed RAW in any place else, you know, basically what you're trying to do is to set a black point at one end and a white point at the other. So you have the blackest black and the whitest white, and then you work with everything in between. What I like to do is start with exposure, and I'm going to bring the exposure up as far as I can go without clipping too badly. Now, if I look at my histogram down here, you can see I'm crushing some blacks here, and I'm also clipping on the highlights. That's what these spikes mean on each end. So I'm going to go next to highlights, and I'm going to bring those down a little bit. And let's see, I may need to bring my exposure up again. I'm kind of back and forth here. Exposure up again, highlights down, and you see I'm getting some of that color coming in. My shadows, if I bring the shadows up, I can start to show some of the tree. And if I bring them way down, I can just make the tree a dark border. I kind of want to have a little bit of that tree texture appearing here. And then I'm going to go to contrast, and I can play with that a little bit. I want to bring out some of the church, and then structure. I'm going to bring my structure up too, and I can zoom in on this and watch what's happening a little bit. But most of these adjustments, and then I'm going to go to saturation. I'm going to saturate a little bit, and I could warm this up a tad or cool it off, but excuse me, I think I'll warm it up. And I'm going to commit to those changes now. And now I have done the raw processing part of this. What I can do now is continue with my other editing. So I'm still in Snapseed. I'm going to go to my tools, and now you see here's the develop tool. And now everything's shifted over. The tune image tool is next to it now. But again, this only appears when you open a raw file. Otherwise, you won't even see it. So now I'm going to go to tune image, and I'm going to sort of continue with that process that we worked before. So I'll play with ambiance a little bit. I'm bringing up the ambiance in the image. I'm going to drop the highlights a little bit, and I'm bringing out the sky. The shadows I can drop a little bit, and I think I want to maybe cool it off a little bit. I don't know if I like it that warm. And then that's getting pretty good. And then I might go to, or then I would go to, oops. When these tools shift, you have to make adjustments to where they are. So the details tool, I'll go to that, and I'm going to pull my structure up, and you can see how as I pull the structure up, it brings the detail out in the church a little bit. And then I'll go to the a little bit of sharpening, and looks pretty good. Now I notice that as I do that, once again, I'm starting to get noise in the sky area. So once again, I'm going to go up to masking, and I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to invert this. So what I mean by invert, I'm going to tap this little button right here. What this is saying right now is that when it's red like that, it's applying all of that structure adjustment to the image. But now what I want to do is say apply it everywhere except here. So now I'm going to just come in with my finger and wipe it away from that area. So it's just a way of, I've inverted it, so I'm wiping away what I don't want there rather than painting in something I do. This is already giving me that texture on the areas that I want it by inverting. So I'm going to close that up, and I took some of that out. Now I think what I need to do, I'm still not happy with that sky. I'm going to go up to details again. I'm going to zoom in on that area. I'm going to drop my structure down and see if I can eliminate some of that noise in the sky. And that looks pretty good. And again, I'm going to go to masking, and I'm going to tell Snapseed smooth that area right there. And again, I'm going quickly. And now there's our image. It's looking really good. What I would do at this point, I would, again, love this vintage scene tool. I would come in here and choose one of these, maybe that. And I might drop the vignette a little bit, saturation, and maybe brighten it a little bit. So something, we end up with something like that. And again, there's so many different options and ways you can go with this. But the last thing I forgot, I noticed down here, there's this sign. And normally a sign like that would be really hard to remove here, and I would probably take it into touch retouch. But let's see how we can do with this. If I get it the right size, not bad. In fact, it did pretty good. Got a little bit of a artifact there. And I find sometimes just tapping does better. So there we go. I'll go ahead and close that out. One of the other things that I like to use when I'm doing processing like this is something called Glamour Glow. I'll tap on Glamour Glow, and you have several different presets, or you can go in and choose here. I'm going to drop that down to maybe 25. And now you can see how it gives it just a kind of a little bit of ethereal glow to it. And that may be it. Let's take a look at let's see, how are we doing on time? All right, let's do one more here, and then I'll see if there are any other questions. Let me grab this image right here, copy it, and paste it into Snapseed. And this is the Earth Goddess at the Atlanta Botanical Garden. Infrared shot on the iPhone. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go into my saturation first, and I'm going to drop my saturation to eliminate the magenta. Then I'm going to come into my exposure, and I'm going to start bringing it up. What I look for with an infrared is I want to get the highlights as bright as I can get them without blowing them out, and the darks, like the tree trunks, to be as dark as they can be, dark as they can be without being completely crushed. I want a little bit of texture or detail if I can get it. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to bring my highlights up a little bit. Then I'm going to go down to my shadows. In my shadows, I might drop down like that. And then a little contrast. You can see how you can just kind of go back and forth. You can see how the contrast shifts. It's making the narrower difference between the light and the dark. And then I'll go to structure, and I'm going to really pop the structure. And finally, saturation, we've already taken to 0. Now, if I wanted, I think, no, I can't do that here. Sometimes you can, I was thinking I could do a sepia tone version of this. But now I'll go ahead and get out of the develop mode. And now I can go on with my other processing. And a lot of times ambiance isn't a big help with the iPhone images, but I usually end up playing more with the highlights and the shadows. See, I can drop my shadows here. And then I notice that it looks like it's, well, maybe it's not. It looks like it's a little crooked. So I might go into perspective and see if I can level it a little bit. It's hard to say. It's kind of a funny angle for everything. Okay. And then what I would do, again, to get these light areas light, I might go into my tune image, and then I might go to highlights and bring those up. See how when I bring them up, I'm lightening some of those top areas, but I'm also going to go down here and bring my brightness up. I don't want those blown out though. But what I'm trying to do here, I'm going to commit to that. Then I'm going to go up and do my masking. And what I'm going to do is try and mask in that lighter color on these darker parts of the image. So I may have needed to go a little brighter with those, but let me see here if I close that up. and go back in there, bring the brightness up and maybe the shadows too. And then I'll go back in here and I'm going to brush those lighter areas in to the image, just a subtle difference. There's where I've painted them in. And it's just a way to kind of get those to work. And then I'm going to go to the healing tool, see how well it does taking this out. Sometimes not great, but we'll see. That's why touch retouch is so valuable. Didn't do terribly bad. Good. Okay. And then the last thing that I would do, one of the things I love to do with my infrared is to add that glamour glow. You know, the original infrared images back in the film day, when they were processed in such a way that they did have this ethereal glow. And I kind of like adding a little bit of that. And of course, you can always add, oops. Of course, you can always add that, that vignette and just give the whole thing a little bit of a darker edge. I might go in, I won't do it now, but I might go in also and darken this area up here or possibly crop it down. I try to avoid these kinds of light spots at the edge of the image. Well, folks, I believe we are close to the end of our time. And I wanted to take a minute to see if there were any additional questions. Just going to kind of scroll through the Q&A here. I have someone asking if you can import to Lightroom on the computer. Yes, so, well, Lightroom on the computer. If you have Lightroom on your iPhone, you can set it up to where you're reading the same catalog on your computer. I don't use my computer as much for Lightroom, but I do use the Lightroom on the phone, and you can do it. I'm not going to be able to tell you how here right now, but if you wanted to follow up with me, I would be able to give you an answer to that. Aheda is saying that I find that when using the latest iPhone, I get a lot of banding. Well, I'm not sure why that would be. Is that if it's the 12 Pro or the 12 Pro Max, I guess I would ask what your settings are. For the camera, do you have Smart HDR on? Do you have Pro RAW turned on? What other things? Again, Hedda, if you would ever want to get in touch with me and talk to me about what exactly is going on, I'd be happy to help try and diagnose it. I've been using the 12 Pro Max and I don't have any issues like that at all. Glenda is asking, how would you fix a shadow on a face from a hat? Well, in much the way that we were doing masking today, what I would do is I would go in, you've got the shadow that's dark on the face. I would go into Tune Image. I would lighten it so that the shadow got to the lightness that I wanted, not caring how the rest of the image looked. Then I would go into masking and I would just mask that shadow and kind of paint in the lighter tone on the shadow using the masking, the way we've done with lots of things today. If you use touch retouch to remove objects, can you move back and forth with SnapSeed, or should you do it all? Should you do all the removal in touch retouch first? You know, that's a good question, Edie. I've done both. A lot of times, if I know I have a serious removal issue, I will take the original image in and work with it. If it's a raw file, though, I will take it and do my raw processing first. So, because I don't want to, touch retouch doesn't work with raw, and I want to get all the value out of the raw before I take it over to touch retouch work in it as a JPEG. So then I would do it in touch retouch after. But I haven't found any problem in going back and forth with JPEG files. Around the tree in the sky, for example, is there any way to avoid that? Oh, you're talking about the banding again. So call me and let me know, because I can't know without what phone and what settings and all that. How do you get your images from your iPhone to computer and vice versa? I use an iMac computer and the iPhone, and I will use AirDrop mostly, and AirDrop them back and forth. That's the most effective way I've found with if you're using a Mac. If you're using a PC, there are other ways. There's an app called PhotoSync that you can get. You can plug your phone in to your computer, and it will read your phone and let you transfer files that way. Will we be able to view this lesson later again and again? Yes, Bonnie, this will be, give me 24 hours and I'll send you a link tomorrow to the recording, and it'll be up until the end of the year. I have a separate album on my iPad for SnapSeed, and it leaves a copy there too. I'm trying to get on my husband's iPad, and his SnapSeed does not have a separate album. So if you remember when let me just go back into it for a quick second. In SnapSeed, I talked about the settings up here. Excuse me. If you choose Save to Snapseed Album, your Snapseed work will be saved not only to your camera roll, but also to a Snapseed album. It doesn't take up any more space on your hard drive. It's just a databasing way of accessing things. So my guess is that on your husband's iPad, he doesn't have Snapseed set up to save to a separate album. So you might check that and see if that will take care of it. Let's see. How do you sharpen just a portion of the image? Well, again, the way we were doing masking today, what I would do, let's say you want to sharpen just the eyes in an image. So you would, let's just quickly do it here because it's so much easier to show you. If I go grab one of these images, let me grab this portrait of these guys and show you what I would do. So I'm going to copy this, paste it into Snapseed. So what I'm going to do on this, let's say all I want to do is sharpen Miguel's eyes. So I'm going to take my tool here. I'm going to get details. I'm going to zoom in on his face here. Excuse me. And I'm going to add some structure, and I'm going to sharpen. And excuse me, I'm doing this to the whole image. I'm going to make this really, really harsh so we can see it. So there's the whole image that I've given that much structure to and that much sharpening to. Now I'm going to commit to that. So I've committed to that. Look how harsh his face is. I don't want his face that way, just his eyes. So I'm going to go up here to my history. I'm going to choose View Edits, Details, Masking Tool, and then I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to paint in that structure on his eyes. And I'm going to do it so we can really see it here. So, and I kind of got all over. So now when we look at that, there's before and there's after. Do you see all that structure? It's way overdone because I wanted to make an example of it. That's how you do it. You set it up to do the whole image, and then you go in and say, only put it in those places using the masking tool. Okay. Jean, can you turn the dog's head to face forward? No, I don't believe that the head positioning tool only works with a human head or human face. It doesn't recognize the dog. That'd be cool, but no. Is there a way to take a raw image and have it look just like it does in your album when you open it in Snapseed? A raw image and have it look just like it does in your album. I'm sorry, Kimberly, I'm not sure I understand your question. If you want to follow up with me later, I'll be happy to try and answer. I just don't understand. Let's see. What button did I push? Okay. Do you offer an IR class? I do one-on-one sessions, and I also have a class that is for sale that I did last year. I've since learned a lot about it, and I'm working on a new class that I hope to have in the next 6 weeks or so. If you watch my newsletter and things, I'll make announcements about it there. if you use touch retouch to move, remove objects, can you move back and forth? Oh, we looked at that already. Am I going the wrong way? Is there a way to take a raw image and have it look? That's the one. I think it looks darker when you open it in Snapseed than it does in your album. Well, yes, because when you open it in Snapseed, the raw file you're talking about, you're looking at it in your album and it doesn't look bad. When you take it into Snapseed in the develop mode, it's taking you into an area where you're going to edit that, and that it will look terrible. It looks dark and black, and that's natural. That's normal for what it should look like. It may not look like that in your camera roll, but it'll tell you that it's a raw file, so you know it's raw. And when you open it in a raw editor, it's going to look pretty funky until you edit it. Well, I think that's all the questions. I know we're a little past time. I'm sorry I kept you over, but this has been really fun. I appreciate the questions. And if I didn't answer your question or you want to ask more, just get in touch with me. I'm happy to talk with you. I'm going to be sending you not only the link to the recording, but also I will send you a handout that has a bunch of things about some of what we've talked about today and some other things. Somebody asked about a tripod, and I've got a list of accessories and things like that, that if you're doing iPhone photography, you may be very interested in. So thank you so much for being here tonight. I really do appreciate it. It's great to see so many friendly faces, or names of people whose faces I know from different things. So thanks for being here, and I hope to see you again, either online or, boy, it'd be great to see it in the field. So I'm going to be doing workshops this fall in Atlanta. I'm trying to get to Cuba, but if you've watched the news, things there are very bad. So I don't anticipate that happening yet this year. But next year, I'll be going to Calabria in southern Italy, and then different workshops throughout the United States as well. So, and Cuba, if it opens up. So stay tuned, and at some point, maybe you'll join me for a tour. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.